question is, how has social media, including television, has been used to shed light on issues of domestic violence? And in what ways has it impacted how victims of domestic violence make their stories known?
Social media is one of the very few unlimited forums where victims of domestic violence can discuss their issues in an innovative fashion. This topic is important because it brings to light the reality that a culture of silence still exists. This affects abused women, and it's important to know about it in order to find ways in which domestic violence can be eliminated. Researchers have already begun to realize how social media can be used to help families, such as Prince Andol with the article, using natural experiments to study the impact of media on the family, which proves the importance of this topic.
We utilize the Lehman College Library online to find articles on domestic violence, scholarly journals, and newspapers to discuss how social media affects the public knowledge on domestic violence. We looked at how social media may or may not provide help to victims of domestic violence.
Some ways that we conducted research for this proposal was through utilizing the Lehman College databases such as JSTOR and ProQuest, and we also collected resources from the internet and videos from YouTube. While doing research for a topic, we used keywords such as media and domestic violence. We also specified what type of media largely influenced battered men and women and the general public, such as TV, Facebook, Twitter, and internet. On YouTube, we searched for domestic violence, short stories, and celebrity domestic violence stories that were released in news and interviews.
As a group, we believe that social media gives victims of domestic violence a voice in which they haven't had in the past. Social media brings awareness to the public that domestic violence is all around us and is very present, even among differing socioeconomic status or circumstance. Different situations, classes, statuses, each are affected by domestic violence, as described in articles of Walter Mauer, Card, and Farrand. We believe that social media affects victims of domestic violence positively by making them more open to speak up about their abuse and experiences. Social media can also make finding people in similar situations easier to reach.
I was bleeding, I was swollen in my face. There was no way of me getting home, except for my next option was to get out of the car and start walking in a gown and a bloody face. So I really don't know what was my plan. I didn't have a plan. It was my best friend. We were in love. It just takes time. And love doesn't go away right away, you know. He didn't accept that very well. Obviously, he didn't want us to be apart. But I know how to make a decision for me.
Some of the things that we have discovered as a group is that finally there is light that is being shed on domestic violence. Social media is allowing us to close the gap from what we know domestic violence is to what others perceive it to be. In the article, Unreported Cases of Domestic Violence Against Women, the author states that in Western countries, it is estimated that about 25% of women experience intimate partner violence at some point in their lifetimes. From the article, we also learned that half of the problem with domestic violence is that it receives less attention and that there are many cases that go unreported. Domestic violence is not as private of an issue as it looks. According to Elisa Bieria, domestic violence is usually not constrained to a domestic sphere or a zone of privacy. It spills over the tenuous boundaries of an abusive relationship, implicating a public who share a knowing, witness the shadows, or sustain the consequences from violence.
Another dimension we have discovered is that there are many reasons why women choose to stay in abusive relationships. As stated in the newspaper article, Domestic Violence Inspires Twitter #movement, common reasons why people stay in abusive relationships are because they are ashamed, do not have the financial means to leave, and think this kind of behavior is typical. The abuser twists and manipulates the other's mind where they start to question their own reality. Also, women fear that if they leave, it will make the situation worse. Usually, the fear is that the abuser will become more violent and harm them.
Other major findings that stand out about this topic is that over time, the victims were able to stand up and face their abuser. They were able to get out of their situations and make powerful statements through social media. Many of the articles agreed that media is a great source to provide information and awareness about domestic violence. The authors in That Guy's Batterer, A Scarlet Letter Approach to Domestic Violence in the Information Age, and Unintended Effects of Domestic Violence campaign both agree that media is a successful way to raise awareness about domestic violence and prevent it. The author, by stating that these publications inform the public about how to recognize the signs of domestic violence and about the public resources available to help those who are being battered and those who want to stop battering. In the article, Facebook Can Be an Aid in Recovery for Many Victims, the author states that social networking and the use of technology can increase awareness of domestic violence and broadcast information on the issues.
Media can shed light to show abused victims that they are not alone and others are there fighting for their well-being. The author states that, however, the coalition hears about survivors using Facebook and other social media to break the strong isolation they feel and reaching out to get the help and information they need to understand the violence they are experiencing. Another form of media, such as newspapers, has been a great resource to use in order to shed light on domestic violence. In the study from the article Domestic Violence in Newspapers, an exploratory study, the author found that online resources has helped bring understanding about domestic violence. The author states that the number of online publications increased from 2% in 2002 to 33% in 2012. The network sharing allows a great understanding of the phenomenon.
The graph illustrates our question, which is, have you ever been a victim of domestic violence? As you can clearly see that the majority, which is 64%, answered yes to this question, whereas only 36% answered no to this question. This shows that domestic violence occurs a lot more than we hear about, but thanks to social media, this is definitely changing.
As a group, we feel that social media has had and will continue to have a positive impact on domestic violence and how it is dealt with. Social media will continue to be an outlet for those victims seeking solace from their situations of domestic violence, and all of our findings support this.
As a group, we were surprised by just how many domestic violence stories have been shared through social media. It is sad just how much domestic violence occurs around us, especially noted in the media. It is also very sad to see that in several accounts, outsiders do not attempt to help the victim. Usually they feel that it's not their place to confront the abuser. Our hypothesis that social media has helped victims of domestic violence to become empowered and share their stories have been confirmed from the research we have done here. Unfortunately, there will always be more to do in the closing gap on occurrences of domestic violence.
The culture of silence is typically spoken of in terms of physical abuse as is sexual assault, but emotional battering is also a main concern among domestic violence. Most people who are victims of domestic violence do not speak of their situations and continue the cycle of abuse in doing so. We believe that due to fear, they feel vulnerable and may be judged by others for not escaping from domestic violence. Social media has been found to be an outlet to help victims of domestic violence to be heard and find resources to change their situations.
How can domestic violence be a non-factor in our society? What policies can be put into place to make domestic violence less prevalent in our day and age? What policies can be implemented to prevent domestic violence in addition to the methods of intervention we have now? Social media can be used in many ways, as shown here, and can continue to serve as a medium for finding and eliminating occurrences of domestic violence. But we must ask, what can victims of domestic violence do to escape their current situations? And what actions can bystanders take in order to aid another individual known to be a victim of domestic violence?
Social media is all around us in this up-and-coming society of multimedia. It also makes sense that major social issues, such as domestic violence, can be largely influenced by the internet, as our access to technology and social networking has increased substantially in our modern advancements. As a group, we have discovered just how much of an impact social media can have on what our society perceives. Social media gives us a voice to overcome obstacles which our patriarchal society has put into place for us to live by.